before you're launched out into the world, this great big world that is always going to have some, work against you all the time.
Right.
Yeah.
Being internally equipped with these three things, this part of one grand foundation, will be what sets you up for success.
Welcome to the Blended Family Breakthrough Podcast. We're your hosts, Mike and Kim.
We believe in a world where blended families can experience a future full of hope, connection, and peace.
That's why we offer tools, strategies, and guidance that move you from a place of confusion and conflict to experiencing a life of confidence and connection.
We're so glad you're joining us for authentic and sometimes comical conversations as we cover everything from romance to parenting, and yes, even dealing with that difficult ex.
So if you're ready to experience breakthrough in your blended family, you're in the right place. Let's dive in. Well, hey there, welcome, and thanks so much for spending some time with us today. We are very excited for you to meet our guest. But first, Happy New Year. At the time that this episode drops, we're all just getting started into 2024, and we hope that you've got a sense of excitement and anticipation about what's to come. Now, you aren't going to want to miss anything this year, so make sure you hit subscribe wherever you're listening and head over to follow us on Blended Family Breakthrough on social, whether it's Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, wherever you're at. We would love to have you connect with us there.
Absolutely. We would love to stay connected with you. Today, we're super excited to welcome our guest, Nellie Harden, on the show because she's going to share something we all really need to pay attention to. This is important. And you know what? It may just be a foundational focus for you in the coming year as you move forward. Now, Nellie is a wife, mother to 4 teenage daughters, and an author and speaker in the space of family life and leadership. She focuses on helping parents love and lead their teen and tween daughters in a way that teaches them to love and lead themselves, while building a strong foundation of worth, esteem, and confidence, all before they leave the home and launch. Yeah. Her background is in biology and psychology, from humpbacks to humans, and she has invested decades of her life into personal, family, faith, and leadership development. Most of all, she believes the best way to change the world is through one living room at a time.
Man, I just love that.
Yeah.
Nellie,
so cool.
Welcome. We are so excited to have you join us today.
Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. Well, there's a few words in there that, you're talking about building foundation. You use the word worth and esteem and confidence and things like that. And so you've done some work around building that. And I wonder, maybe we could start with just a little bit of background. Like, what was it that you said, you know what, I think this is what I want to dedicate my time and effort to?
Yeah. How'd you get here?
Yeah, that is, looking back on my 45 years, it's a convoluted path that gets us where we are, but really it always led here. And so growing up in the very beginning, I lost my dad. My dad passed away when I was super young. I was only about a year and a half old when he passed away. And then it was just my mom and I. And then she remarried when I was 8 and had my brother and sister in that time frame too. And so, there was a lot of change that happened in my early life. I mean, my brother is 11 years younger than I am. So really, birth to 11, 12 years was just, a constant state of this change leading up to change, going through change, and that post-change, time period. Yeah. And then when I left home, graduated early and left home at 17 and moved 7 hours away from home. And when I left, I didn't have the language or understanding then. I was just really a young woman on a mission to become a marine mammologist, which is where the humpbacks come from in the intro. And I could talk about that more in a second, but I was just on a mission, but I didn't have the life know-how. I did not have the foundations of worth, esteem, and confidence to go off and really have a grounded life from there. And that's what's happening so often to many of our young women. And I was included in that we are being released out into the world instead of launched from a platform, a foundation that we have that is strong and built. Yeah. And when we're released out into the world without that foundation, so many times, and what happened to me as well, is that we end up chasing our worth everywhere that we can find it. Anyone that gives us a compliment, we're like, oh, okay, I better chase this rabbit trail. I better chase this rabbit trail and go down. And then we find ourselves in this addiction to needing to be filled from the world, right? Outside in instead of inside out. And it led me down some really dark places, personally, academically, and it's taken decades of my life to really come to terms with and heal. In fact, some, big things even just happened this year in that healing journey, and we're many years past when I, that time frame for me. So then fast forward, and I'm a young woman, and, I'm going through this healing journey, and it ebbs and flows so much that, as trauma does, right? Some days it hits you smack in the face, and some days you can easily put it in a container in the back seat, but it's always there, right? And it's waiting. And then my husband and I get married, and we go through infertility, which is this whole emotional experience, right, for years. And then we have 4 kids in 4 years, which is a whole emotional experience in that. Sure. But we had 4 daughters. And so I was then, as a woman that's on my own healing journey from not having this foundation and having this background in biology and psychology and understanding things a lot more later on, then looking at them and saying, okay, wow, like we have this time frame that is unique and will never, ever happen again in what I call the 65-70. That's how many days are in 18 years. And so I want to make sure to harness this time as much as possible and be very intentional in it. With all of them, even intentional in my mess ups, because I mess up all the time, every day, fall down, right, as a mom. But I get back up again, take accountability, apologize when needed, right? Teach them how to take accountability and do those things. And so, but having these 4 young women that were 4 and under, looking back at me, and we were going through a health crisis with my husband. We almost lost him as well during that time. But looking at them and saying, okay, we have this time frame. I know what needs to be built because I had to build it in my adulthood, which is much, much, much harder. Yes. So let's do it in the more plastic, moldable time of your childhood, and let's do this thing. And so then it's, just started moving on into that arena. And I started going from the animal field, which I was in for, career 1.0, to the much more messy human field and family, which is even, more messy, sub category there. And so positive disciplines, encouragement, worth esteem, confidence, leadership, what that looks like and where it's going. So that's a abbreviated version of how I really came to be doing what I do today. It comes from my personal experience and as just a young woman myself, and then also raising 4 young women.
Yeah. Well, thank you for sharing that, Absolutely. Nellie. I can really relate. I feel like I was kind of released into the world and have been on a journey of trying to figure out all of this and wasn't prepared or equipped. And that term you used in there, chasing our worth, that just really resonates with me. We see, my oldest Annika doing that right now and really trying to find her worth in other people and other things of the world that really aren't healthy, self-destructive things. And so thank you for sharing that. It's hitting me hard. I feel some emotion coming up. I'm like, oh, I so get it. Yeah.
One of the things that I have loved about just connecting with you, Nellie, is the intentionality. Even the fact that, let's do the math on 18 years and narrowing it in, like, that builds a sense of importance and urgency
Yeah.
around we've got this limited time, and we could look at 6,570 days and say, well, that's a long time. Yeah, we got lots of time. But actually, when I read that, I go, ooh, in the grand scheme of things, that's a really short time. And so what am I going to do that's intentional about impacting my kids? And while I didn't put it in those terms, I feel like that was my heart as well, is to be really intentional as we were raising our children along the way.
Yeah, as we made a lot of imperfect progress.
Yeah. You have a few words for sure. You have a few words in there: worth, esteem, and confidence. And you refer to those as a foundation. Yeah. Tell us about, what it really means. Why is it so important to center on those three things and build a foundation there during those, 6,570 days?
Well, really, when it comes down to it, and looking at the pyramid of development with parenting and family life within childhood, when our children come into our lives, they depend on us for everything, right? Sure. Physiologically, everything. And then you start building, some security in there. But then in the second half of childhood, you start handing over the baton a little bit, because first half of childhood, you're really building life for them. You are you're dictating and spoon feeding life. This is what we're eating. This is who your friends are. This is who your family is. This is where you go to school. This is, who you will hug and who you won't, all the things, right?
Yeah.
Second half of childhood is this training zone, this arena, if you will, where we are teaching them how to do life so that when they do leave the home later on, sometime between 65, 70 and the 9125, that's another number for you. That's how many days are in 25 years.
Okay. Finally, the prefrontal cortex is finally developing. Yeah.
Exactly. And so somewhere between 65, 70 and 9125 is when they leave. And I, just mention or stopping on the numbers for a second. Back when I was pregnant, so my middle two are twins, and my daughters are 18, 16, 16, and 14 right now. Okay. And at the recording of this. And when I was pregnant with the twins, I think that was the first time I ever heard that saying that I think so many of us have, right? The days are long, but the years are short.
Right.
And it's a fun little saying. You can put it up on your wall, you can have it here, but really thinking about what that means, because when the days are so long as a parent and as a child, you can get lost in those and thinking that you're in a permanent state. Yeah. And always understanding we're actually in a temporary state right now, because God willing, most of their life is going to be spent outside of this cocoon that you have at home. And so this is a very temporary state that we are in, and always having that be a reminder, because it's very easy to think and feel this day is never going to end, right? There's so much happening in here. So the days are long, the years are short. And especially when the kids start to get older, that perspective becomes so much more real. But always keeping in mind, hold on, we are in a temporary state right now. So what can I do with it, right? Just like when someone gets a new job, you're in the training time. This is a temporary state. So, that being said, that worth, esteem, and confidence are what really need to be delivered in the second half of childhood. They are certainly starting to be built, and seeds of those things in the first half of childhood. But first half security is absolutely monumental during that first half. Physiological, of course. Security, absolutely. And then dropping those seeds of worth, esteem, and confidence, but really delivering those in the second half and showing up for those. But that's when you're coming alongside them. You're no longer just spoon feeding them life.
Right.
Now you're coming alongside them and they're trying some things. You're coming back and, you're like, okay, so how did that go? Okay, well, let's take that back, some steps, or let's, so it's a huge dance that is played, an exhausting one, it realistically speaking, in the adolescent years for sure. But that is really worth is, am I worthy? Am I worthy of people's attention? Am I worthy to be seen? Do my words matter? Do my ideas matter? Right? Do I even have a purpose here?
Yeah.
Right? Am I loved? Do I belong?
Mm.
When you strip away so much of the issues that our adolescents are having right now, it comes down to some of these factors, right? Seen, heard,
Mhm.
love, belong, purpose right there. And then esteem, right? That's value and appreciation of self, and confidence is a true belief in self. And
Mhm.
before you're launched out into the world, this great big world that is always going to have some, work against you all the
Yeah.
time,
Right.
Yeah.
being internally equipped with these three things, this part of one grand foundation,
Mm.
will be what sets you up for success.
Yeah.
Mm.
No, I love that. And I agree. I think that's some really foundational things. I know we're going to get to some practical pieces in a little bit, but I just want to pause because I think potentially there might be some people listening that have a light bulb going off just for a moment, going, well, wait a second. We're blending.
Mm-hmm.
We're just getting together. And my kids are already in that second half.
Mm-hmm.
And now my job is
Mhm.
not to spoon feed them
Mhm.
life, as you put it. It's actually to be release them. However, when we start blending, especially early on, we revert to spoon feeding.
We
We
do.
want to, okay, changes are coming. We got this
Yeah.
new person or these new people coming into our home. That means rules change and the dynamics change and the culture changes. And so I'm going to have to tell you all these things that are changing and expect some compliance from you right in a stage of life where they're
Mhm.
hoping to get the baton.
Yeah.
And we're just ripping that baton right back.
Often the message is, this is how I need you to behave.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So interesting to begin to start to talk about, okay, in that situation, how do we begin? And I know that you do some work in your community, you work
Mhm.
with parents, you work
Mhm.
with other teens and that kind of thing. So I'm excited here in a little bit. We're going to get to some practical thoughts around, okay, how do I focus on this right now, regardless of where I am in the stage? Yeah. Before we get to that, you've got this, this worth, esteem, and self-confidence.
Foundation.
Yeah, the foundation. What would you say is the very base of that foundation, the very core of it, if you could
Mhm.
just narrow down to one thing, one word?
Well, really what everything is leading toward, and you can look at it like a pyramid or a triangle, right? The very base of it is physiological. Then we have that security, right? First half of childhood. Then you add on the foundation of second half. So worth, esteem, and confidence. And it's like this 5-tiered cake. We'll put it that way.
Okay.
Everyone loves cake, right?
Yeah.
But what is on top of a cake? There's always something, a little
Yeah.
something or other on the top of the cake. And what that is all leading toward is self-leadership right there, self-disciplined leadership. And so that's the core of what everything is going toward.
Yeah.
But down at the base where you're talking, there's a bunch of influences that play into what this is, right? And so those
Right.
influences are certainly biology, right?
Okay.
How the genetic makeup, your genetic tendencies, right? And we are not a walking look at what our genetics are, right? It
Right.
depends on what our environment is. And so that's why there's a combination of all of these things. So biology is one, culture is another, right? Faith, what do you believe in? What are your, core beliefs and your core values? That is all going to play into there.
Yeah.
And then there's also going to be your psychology, your personality. How do you react and take in and learn from other people? And how are they learning from you? What is your outgoing personality, right? We learn, that's incoming. Our personality is our outgoing.
Right.
All of those are what really make up the base of what this is. And that's why I'm so grateful that I had my animal background that I did, because working in the animal field, and I worked in the field, I worked in captivity also, and I even worked in surgical. And so I saw interactions with, humans and their animals all the time. But what I saw was that, especially out in the wild, what is the grand purpose of childhood? It was really to get them to a point that they can go out independently and sustainably live their life in success, right?
Yeah.
Now, like I said earlier, human realm brings layers and layers and layers more of complexity to it. Not to mention that we are living in a time of kind of this prolonged childhood experience that we have. And so that adds another layer of complexity because our kids, so many of them are asking, requiring, or demanding or expecting adult freedoms with still childlike responsibilities. And that is a discrepancy that we are having to deal with as parents today.
Sure.
So it gets messier, but I really appreciate that I was able to see, okay, black and white without the complexity so much. This is the purpose of childhood. So now that we can bring that in, okay, this is where we're building toward. And in the human realm, we have biology, psychology, faith, and culture all right there playing into as influences, massive influences into building up this foundation with the ultimate goal being self-discipline leadership of self.
So that's the frosting on the cake, or
that's there you go. That's
the fun little flourish. The fun
Yeah.
little tasty, sugary flourish on the top is that piece of self leadership. That's so important. And what's coming to mind as you're talking is the second half of childhood where, we want to wean kids off of the spoon feeding is really about entering into this phase of self-discovery. Is that correct? Or what would you add to that?
I would say discovery as well, but I also hasten that because sometimes out in culture today, there is this misnomer of, especially when it comes to identity. And, there's a lot of this, go find your identity, go discover your identity. And that's really not how identity is created. Identity is built, right? You see something that you want to do. Of course, you have those natural genetic, tendencies that are within you, but ultimately our mind, our decisions are much, much more powerful than our genetic tendencies that we have and personality and things like that. And so we build our identity over time. And so this time is really discovering, like you were saying, it's discovering, what do you really want, right? What are your interests? How are you going to get there? Discovering their discipline, right? Discovering how they're going to get somewhere. Discovering, you know what? I understand that this is a temporary time. I'm 100% honest here. Maybe an hour and a half ago, I was having this discussion with one of my daughters, Seaside, where I live here.
Sure.
Just pulled over the car and had to have, this discussion and letting her know, listen, she was one of the twins. So I'm like, you're 16, we only have a little bit of time left and your future self needs me to help you with this today. And so really having a lot of those discussions because they're your daughter, your son's future selves, they're 25, 35. Honestly, they're 65 and 75-year-old selves need you today showing up intentionally to teach and guide this situation because this situation, albeit just about, I don't know, a weird friendship or a hard friendship that they're having in the classroom will then be a springboard to so many other things later on.
Yes.
And so, just really helping them understand this perspective and really this temporary situation that they're in, how much they're loved, how much that they belong during this time, but really discovering what their interests are and where they want to go in life.
Yeah. I love the way that you put that. Your future self needs me today. I think one of the ways that we said a similar thing over the years was, hey, we take our job really seriously as parents because we love you too much not to talk about these hard things. So we're going to talk about these hard things right now.
So there's a big difference between spoon feeding and telling them what they should and shouldn't be doing and what they need to do, and teaching and guiding.
Yes.
That's the big chasm that a lot of parents find challenging to move in that direction, especially in the blended dynamics where there's a lot of parenting by guilt and fear.
Yeah.
And we're just not sure how to approach things because we don't want to make things harder for our kids who have lived through trauma and maybe have some anger or some anxiety around the situation. Yeah. And so we tend to see our kids through this lens sometimes of pity. And so it can be very challenging to own our own parenting and take on these challenges that you're talking about when we're emotionally kind of stunted ourselves because of all the trauma and grief we've lived through, either through a divorce or a death of a partner, and watching our children go through that. And then now the blending is also, a whole new set of grief and trauma that our kids experience and we watch and have to navigate. Yeah.
100%. And you mentioned, that word should, and how, we're trying to tell our kids, should, or we're feeling the shoulds, right? And it's really important. I mean, I'm kind of jumping a step ahead a little bit, but one of the practical things that you can do, and I just say it now because it fits in with what we're talking about, is asking them to reiterate what you said to them. Because even this morning when I'm talking with, my daughter, and I was like, okay, so we've just talked for, I don't know, it was maybe 10 minutes. And I was like, what did you hear me say? And what are you taking out of this? And two things she said, and they both started with, you should, or I should. And I was like, hold on. I never said the word should, right? I never, ever said the word should. I said, this would best serve you, right? This would best serve you if you had this perspective or thought about this or what have you. And the reason we don't want to do shoulds is because we don't want to teach them how to wear a mask. And one of the things that she said was, I should be more joyful. And I was like, no, that is not what I'm saying at all. I said, I want the joy that you're feeling on the inside to be expressed on the outside much, much more. I said, I don't want you just putting on a coat of joy to parade around people. Right. I said, that will help no one, and especially not you. And I said, but what I do want is your inner joy then to be shown and expressed on the outside a little bit more. So just asking your kids after you have these hard, conversations, these courageous conversations, as I call them, and all of the scenarios that you just mentioned, what did you hear me say? What are you taking out of this? Because probably close to 100% of the time, you're going to have to bring some clarity into that.
Yeah, I love that. That's really good.
Yeah, I love that term, courageous conversations. I'm writing that down.
For sure. For sure.
Because that's what we're asking parents to do.
Yeah. So our goal is to invest in this foundation of worth, esteem, and confidence in order to eventually build that self-leadership where we can launch young people out into the world equipped to be healthy, confident, contributing members to society. I love all that.
And to thrive.
Now,
if I had pom-poms right now, I would shake.
I love that too. I mean, that we're definitely aligned in our a view of what parenting really is all about.
We want them to thrive.
Absolutely. Now, how do you understand, or what have you discovered about how trauma impacts all of that?
So with trauma, and speaking, from a person that's been through trauma as well, is if you look at that cake or that pyramid that I talked about, every time that there's trauma, it for sure takes away the worth, esteem, and confidence temporarily, right? Hopefully temporarily.
Yep.
And depending on the type of trauma, it can also completely take away that security piece.
Yeah.
And so then you are left very raw, very vulnerable, right? And so any touch to that person, albeit physical touch, emotional touch, spiritual touch, mental touch, is going to feel like you just had a burn and you touch it, right? It's very raw. Yeah. And so the more tools that you can introduce that work for that person, the better that they will be able to rebuild strong again.
Yeah.
And so, especially with trauma, because it goes through these cycles, right? I've been on, my trauma journey for 27 years now, right? And there is some years that it hits me like a Mack truck, and there's some years that I'm like, okay, it's all good. And so during the peaceful years, especially, building strong and always working at it, never ever thinking it's gone. It's gone. I'm past it, right?
Wow.
It's always going to be there because it's a part of who you are. It's a part of your life, and it can be used for good. I promise. I have been through, and I have also helped mentor and coached families through some really, really dark trauma. And everything can be used for good. Even the darkest things can be used for good. But it's hard to see that during some seasons of trauma. 100%. It can feel impossible to see that outcome. And you don't even want to hear that, right? Because of things that you've been through. There's no way that this could possibly serve me in any possible positive manner. But it can eventually, but you need to work on these tools in the meantime. And when we're talking about worth, esteem, and confidence, you ask anybody, would I want my child to have worth, esteem, and confidence? Well, sure. Great. Awesome. But actually grasping it and putting legs to these, they feel like a cloud, almost like these cloud concepts of, that looks great, but there's nothing to grasp onto, right? There's no action steps. And that's what we've really done in the 6570 Family Project, is put action to these more cloud concepts so that they can be something that you can stand firm on and be a platform and a foundation. So in that is these tools that you can use, right? There's one called the EMP, for example. That's emotional, mental, physical tools that you use in order to build resilience. And it's different for everybody. You build your own tool that works for you, right? And, we have 6 people in our family. We're all going to have different EMPs, right? And, I love the idea of an EMP too. It's powerful. It knocks everything else out. But building these tools specific to that person, because what works for me is not going to be necessarily what works for you, or even my kids, certainly not my spouse, right?
Sure.
And so we're all different. So we all need different tools, but we can all build them toward the same goal.
Yeah. I'm hoping that you'll be able to share 3 or 4, strategies or tools that are really practical. But I want to talk a little bit from a blended family situation here, especially as we've been talking about trauma and how do we build tools to deal with that trauma. Every child in a blended family has experienced some kind of trauma.
A loss.
There's been a loss. There was a separation between mom and dad. There was a death. You experienced that as a young person. I experienced the same thing. My mom passed away when I was a year old. That's a trauma. So when it comes to these kids who, they're in that second half of life and there's this trauma of this, and now we're blending, which means now we're changing the culture. Yeah. Culture was one of your things that shapes people, right? We might not be changing the culture of the society we're living in, but we're definitely changing the family culture inside the home.
Right.
And so as kids are going through all that, maybe if you could just reflect on, from a parent's point of view, to get a better understanding of what their kids might be experiencing, what's going on inside for a kid that's in that situation.
I remember being in this situation myself when my mom married when I was 8, and I loved him. They'd been dating since I was 4, and one of the other pieces there, just because I work with a bunch of people in this sector, is, either a divorce, or there was a death or abandonment, even from early on, right? That's the other big piece that's in here. And so all of those feed into, okay, now my whole life is changing and I have to be somebody else, quote unquote, right? And I'm getting a new title, I'm getting this. And even though it can be hopefully some good aspects of it, right? Even good stress is stress. And so they're feeling this new definition coming in. So I really like to focus on that worth as long as they feel secure, right?
Yep.
Their
Mhm.
physiological needs, they feel secure, they're safe where they are, right? That worth piece has to be there. And any big change, it's going to always go back to this worth piece because it is made up of the 5 biggest needs that every human that ever was, is, or will be has. And that is, I need people to see me. I need people to see me and know who I am, right? I can't be invisible.
Yep.
I need people to hear me. I need to know that my voice, my ideas matter and I'm not just a joke, right?
Right.
I need to know that I am loved and that someone cares, more about me than I do. Or, if I go out and I'm by myself, someone actually cares, right?
Yeah.
Someone is going to be worrying about me.
Yeah.
And then I belong somewhere. So many of our kids don't feel like they belong anywhere today. So many, especially in adolescence, all the way up to the 91-25, that 25-year-old time frame there. So belonging is huge. And then, of course, there's purpose. What is your purpose there? So knowing those, seen, heard, loved, belong, and purpose, what can you do with them during that time? And this is going to blend in with the practical tips, I guess, too.
Yeah.
But having one-on-one time with that child is
Yes.
going to be so important.
Yes.
And I really recommend having one-on-one time as the parent who is bringing the child into this situation.
Yeah.
Yep.
And then also as the new parent, right? And getting to know that child outside of just, you're the person I'm marrying's child, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, hold the phone. You need to have a relationship with this child too,
Right.
one-on-one. And so I really recommend one-on-one time. And it does not have to be anything spectacular.
Right.
So many families coming into blended families feel like they need to buy off the kids.
Yeah. Don't do
Let's
that.
go to a big Major League Baseball game. Let's, go to amusement park. Let's, whatever it is, it could just let's just take a walk every morning, or a few times a week. Let's go grab a coffee or, asking the child, what do you love to do? Skateboarding. Awesome. I know nothing about skateboarding. Do you think you could teach me something? Let's build one. Whatever that is, right?
Yep.
Just playing into in a good way and not in just a surface way, but really playing into the child's interests and helping them know, you know what? You are worthy. You are worthy of my time. You're worthy of my attention. And I know this isn't easy and it's a little, crazy at times and it feels a little disjointed, but I want to get to know you. I want to be in your life, right? You are worthy of that. And I want to be worthy of you, right?
Yeah.
And it's just huge. So really focusing on their simple things like saying their name, saying the child's name. Our brain makes a different connection when our name is being said than when, like if they walk into a room and it's just them and you start talking, of course, they're going to assume you're talking to them. But if you just say their name, they clue into attention that much faster. And they're like, oh, they're talking to me, right? And this is for me right now. And so, and then when it comes to purpose and belonging, roles are going to be huge in a blended family. And so talking about, okay, so this person is coming into your life. I know they might not feel like your, most favorite person right now. If there's, that annoying little sibling that's coming in then or what have you. But wow, you get to be a part of, the group that is going to influence this child's life. What is something that you would like to teach this, teach this person or teach her, teach him? And how are you going to do that? And making one of the older siblings think, well, I don't know, I could teach them about Roblox, whatever.
Yeah, sure. Totally. Yeah. Yeah.
And so really just establishing roles in the family, because when a blended family first comes together, it can just feel like such a mishmash of, I don't know who goes where, it's kind of like a reorg at a company that forgot the organization part after they dropped the old hierarchy. And so really establishing roles within the new blended family and having them be positive role models, teaching, inspiring, and going from there, but always making sure the parents, of course, are the team leaders there.
Yeah, I love that. One of the things Ron Deal says often is that step families are born out of loss and they're born into ambiguity. And part of what you're talking about there is let's bring some clarity to that ambiguity, especially as we think about the roles and establishing those roles in a solid way. And thank you so much for talking about one-on-one time, because we talk about that all the time. And how do we really establish those focal points that I belong? That's one of the key messages that we talk to parents about all the time. Is kid needs to understand, especially a child who's moving back and forth between two homes.
Yes.
Often their sense of belonging is being kind of eroded through that process.
Yeah, definitely.
And so the more that we can help them know, hey, you belong here. And step parents play a great role in that. One of the things I hear you saying in that of being conscious and aware of, here's the investment, here's the contribution I want to make to this stepchild, is this focus of energy from I want to have authority, right? They're a kid, I'm an adult, they should listen to me, and so on and so on. We get caught up in that. I've been caught up in that as a stepdad, and it's hard not to be. I get it. But it's so much more powerful when we shift our focus from authority to influence. And we start to recognize, hey, if I want to have any actual lasting, meaningful influence in this child's life at all, I need to focus on building relationship. And like you're saying, Nellie, like that might just start with, hey, every morning we're going to go for a 5-minute walk, and I just want you to know that I'm here for you. That it might start right there.
And I really recommend making it a part of a routine, because if you don't, then it feels like you're asking someone out on a first date over and over and over again, and it gets super awkward. And so I remember right before I was leaving for college, I asked my stepdad, but my dad, and I asked him if he would go out to dinner with me. I just wanted to take him out to dinner, and just the two of us. We really never did that, as evidenced by his reaction, because I just asked him out to dinner, and we were going to go, and we were going to this place. It was called Mountain Jack's, and it was this nice restaurant in Michigan. And, my mom, before, she was like, so is everything okay? I asked him maybe like 4 or 5 days before we were going. I was like, yeah. And then she's like, your dad is so nervous. He has no idea what you're going to tell him. And I was like, I'm just going out to dinner, and he thought I was going to like drop some huge bomb on him. It was just like, it was just one of these things. I was just like, I wanted to take you out to dinner. I wanted to, show my appreciation for, all of these years since I was 8, I just wanted to spend time. And there was like, oh my goodness, there must be something wrong, happening. Man. And so I really encourage people to make it a routine. In our home, Tuesday and Thursday nights from 9 to 9:45, those are our one-on-one times. And so on Tuesday nights, my husband goes in with one daughter, I go in with another. Thursday night, we go in with one daughter and then another. And then the next week we switch. And so they know they can rely on. So it's not one of these things where we only have one-on-one time when there's something really heavy to talk about, right?
Yes.
Sometimes we go in there and we just, one of my daughters loves to watch like funny golden retriever videos on Instagram with us, and we just laugh. What else do you do on
Instagram?
Yeah. And so, but sometimes they're hard conversations. Sometimes it is learning something. Sometimes it's, oh, what's going on with your friend group, and this. Sometimes it's laughing at stupid Instagram videos, and so setting up the routine gives that urgency feel and that anxiety feel of, oh, we need one-on-one time. It puts that to the wayside. And I also recommend this, not just between parents and kids, but between siblings. And so even if they're not of driving age or what have you, like going and working on something together, go sit on the front porch, go read together, whatever that is, but just making sure that they have connection time again, not just when it's an emergency, if it costs you $20 to send them to, you know, a restaurant to sit down, you could drop them off and pick them up. Yeah, the arcade, anything like that, building those bonds and having that time during good times and not so good times is difficult times, I will say, then you are establishing routine of relationship, which is a great foundation to build real connection.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm wondering if we can circle back around to this point you made about purpose. I love this idea of giving all the kids some established roles as you're blending so that they are building that sense of purpose. I also know that this is a topic that a lot of parents will cringe at because, oh, no, we're going to mix things up. I'm worried to ruffle feathers. I don't want to make my kids' lives any harder than it already is. I don't feel like they should have to, you know, invest or contribute. How can we, because you put it in such a positive way, like this is a great thing. You get to be part of this child's life. What do you think that you could invest? Can you give us some tips to help ease parents' stress around, oh no, you know, if I ask them to do something, it's going to not, you know, they're not going to want to come here anymore, or they're going to push back. I mean, that's a really real fear and the guilt too. Oh, I've already put them through so much. Now I'm asking them to contribute and have a purpose in the home and a role. Can you talk a little bit about just, you know, how to deliver that in a positive way and the positive things that come from this? Because we so believe in this, but we see so many parents really resisting this. They just worry.
So I would really combat that with saying, if you're worried and have anxiety about, you know, giving these assigned roles or really just shining light on the roles, I will say. It's not like, you know, a military assignment. This is, you know, your role. It's more shining light on a role.
I like that.
But make sure that those first two are being really sought after. And that is, you want to see your kid and you want to hear them out. Because if you're having anxiety over what they're going to say or what they're going to feel, when there's clarity, there's no anxiety. Okay. So the more clarity you can get on that and just sit down with that child and be like, so I would really love to see, you know, you being able to be a positive influence in, you know, your, this little child, you know, smaller child's life or, you know, what have you. But how do you feel about that? Right. What are your thoughts about it? And that goes into the major tool that we have in Esteem, which is called the HALT system in there, but talking about how thoughts come before feelings. You have thoughts and then you invest in certain thoughts and develop feelings about them. There's actually a break in there that goes on in our neurochemistry there. And so asking them, what are your thoughts? Okay, so how do you feel about that? Doing thoughts before feelings when you're talking with your kids is really powerful. But making sure that your kids feel seen and heard is so important. And if they don't know, then ask, how can I make you feel or help you feel seen? Right? What do you need from me right now in order to help you feel seen? Because obviously what I'm doing right now isn't working. And I want to make sure that you know how valuable you are. You know how worthy you are. And a huge part of that is making sure that you feel seen. So what do you need right now? Right. And so they're only going to have resistance toward being a positive influence in somebody else's life when they don't feel themselves like they're being seen and heard. And so really making sure that is being established.
Yes, that's so true. And by asking those questions, what can I do to help you feel seen and heard? That, you know, is the love piece. I care.
Right.
I want to love you well. I want to be there for you. And, you know, another piece of that, often parents are, especially parents who carry a lot of guilt, will tend to want to throw a silver lining out there. So if they ask a child, what are your thoughts about this? And what do you feel about this? And the child says something negative. Well, I don't like that I have to share a room, or I don't like that they're always in my stuff or whatever. the parent will try to kind of throw the silver lining. Oh, but they're this and they're that and they're this. And then that defeats the point. Yeah. Well, at least you get this, at least you get that. And so we're always asking parents to just affirm, what I hear you saying is that it's really annoying when they get in your stuff, or what I hear you saying is it's hard to share the space. Tell me more, and just let them keep talking and talking and talking. But an initial response from a lot of parents is, oh my gosh, I'm dragging them into this and their thoughts are negative. Their feelings are negative. Now, how do I go into fix it mode?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I got to fix it or erase it.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
There's nothing like a good fixing or erasing to make someone feel unheard and unseen.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Even earlier today, one of my daughters is like, well, our oldest daughter is home from college right now. And I was asking one of my younger daughters, I was like, oh, are you loving having her home? She's like, yes, it's so nice having her home. And I said, what's, your favorite part? She goes, well, I can just talk to her about all my problems. And I was like, well, just know that, your dad and I are here for anything that you're going through too. And she was like, well, I can just vent to her. And I think that's great. I want them to obviously have those sibling relationships, but she's not always here anymore. So I want to also make sure that you can come and vent to me also. And I said, listen, if you need to have a vent fest about a sibling or whatever, that's great. And I'm here. I vent to your dad all the time. He vents to me. We get it. I said, one of the things that you can do is just preempt it by saying, I just need to vent, because then I'll know I'm just going to sit back and listen, and I don't need to be the fixer. I don't need to erase anything. I don't need to do the silver lining. You just need to get some things off your chest, and that is great. And she was like, okay, that makes sense. And so, just giving them that allowance, that capacity and that space to be able to do that. One last tool that I want to make sure to get in here is when a blended family is coming together, like we said, it can be very messy during that first, while. It could last months, it could last a couple of years, right? Or more. I really recommend that the entire family come together. And maybe even, depending on the families, I've worked with this in both ways. If the bio parents or whatever that live in separate homes, everyone can come together. And there is one rule that everyone can abide by and agree on. Now, I'll give you an example just because it's the one rule in our house. We only have one, because it's so easy as parents, especially in blended families, because there's different backgrounds, you can all of a sudden feel like you're in the Hogwarts. I think it's the fifth one where there's like 900 rules on the wall and no one can remember any of them. Right. And it's like, wait, what? I wasn't supposed to do that, but that, so coming up with one simple rule. In our house, it's ROCKS, ROCKS, and it just stands for respect, obedience, compassion, kindness, self-discipline. And so that everyone agrees on. We can be in the middle of a family dinner that might have taken a hard left turn or something, and I just say ROCKS. Everyone gets it. Everyone knows, okay, one of the rocks was violated or, we're heading toward the cliff or what have you. So let's get back on. But respect, obedience, compassion, kindness, self-discipline. And I've had other families come up with different ones, but for us, that's the one rule that all of us can always lean on. And it always keeps us on the right path together and individually. And so keeping that level of simplicity during could be tumultuous time. Again, tumultuous, complicated, or tumultuous, really good. It's still tumultuous, but making sure to keep it as simple as possible of something that everyone can keep a focus on.
Yes, we definitely love to coach people around, instead of having the 101 do's and don'ts and all the rules, to focus more on values instead of rules. How do we lead and guide our children based on the values that are important to both of us?
Right. And within that, helping the couple get united. Because again, we've talked about different family cultures, right? We've got one partner over here that has had a family culture, single parent years, and they're used to what dad's doing. And then we've got, this mom over here who's had all these single parent years, and they're used to what she's doing. They're very distinct cultures. Now that couple has to try and blend those cultures and merge that and figure out, okay, what what does rocks mean to us?
Yeah.
What does that look like? Because I know what it means to me over here, and I know what you know what it means to you over there, but we don't know what it means to us yet.
Yeah.
And that's challenging. And we're kind of building the airplane while we're flying, right? Because the kids we hit the ground running, kids are already need responses and all of that.
We've got pre-established patterns that are already well set.
Yeah.
And it's amazing how even the word like respect can mean so many different things to people. Like even when we got together, you know, you found my daughter to be disrespectful when she left stuff all over the house. And I'm like, well, that's not disrespect. That's, you know, that's being a 5-year-old kid.
Two different definitions.
Yep, very different.
Absolutely. Man, Nellie, you have really packed some great value into this. I'm just going to, in my own words, kind of recap some of what I heard you say. First of all, you said, ask, what did you hear me say? So I'm just going to model that right now, and I'm going to try to set it back. Okay, so what did you hear me say? That's a great question to ask kids to help them affirm that.
Just clarify.
We don't want to should ourselves or each other to death, right? Let's get rid of these shoulds. One-on-one time in both step and bio relationships. So important. It doesn't have to be a big, grandiose thing.
Yeah, keep it simple.
Keep it very simple, right? We want to establish roles. Let's bring some clarity to that ambiguity that we're all entering into. And we want to establish routines along the way within that so that, you know, when we ask stepdad out to dinner, it's a normal thing and he's not going, oh my gosh, what kind of bomb is she going to drop, right? We want to establish those routines. I love this. We want to help kids feel seen, heard, loved, that they belong, and that they have purpose. Really love that. We can talk about thoughts before feelings. And as we're bringing everybody together, let's keep it simple with one simple rule or one simple phrase that's going to help us stay focused. I mean, if we could just do those things, our ability to start to move kids toward worth, esteem, and confidence would go way up. I totally see, you know, everything that you're saying really makes sense to me. I have one question before we come to wrap up. What about that parent or that step parent who is recovering from trauma themselves and they're already struggling with their own worth, esteem, and confidence? And now we're asking them to do all these things to build that worth, esteem, confidence foundation into their children and stepchildren. What kind of encouragement or advice might you have for that parent or step parent?
Well, I am that parent, so I can definitely speak into this. And first of all, those listening that are in that boat, know that it is much harder to do this as an adult because our frontal lobe is fully formed. Those tracks are laid and our neuroplasticity in our brains is much more firm post 25 than pre 25, especially during these adolescent years. That's why it's so important to try and do this during the childhood experience, but it's not impossible. I've been doing it, but what I would say is be honest. I mean, I'm not saying that you have to be honest and give every detail of whatever your trauma was, especially if it was a deeply personal trauma to you, but be honest and do it with them. And so you can say, you know what? I don't have these foundations built within me yet, but I'm trying really hard to build them while I'm helping you build yours. So do you think we could do this together? Right. And then there's this mutual respect in it. And for so many of our kids, they look at parents, especially step parents, as, oh, they're up on this throne, right? They're just telling me what to do and not to do. And they don't actually care about me. They're not connecting with me. It's just put away the dishes, you know, you can't have the car or whatever it is. Right. And so if you are coming into that as a parent or a step parent, just be really honest and vulnerable. We lead, they follow, right? In the work that I do, it's all about loving and leading them to a place that they love and lead themselves. Right. So we have to go first. And that's hard, but it is not impossible. So go first, be vulnerable, let them know, you know what? I didn't have these built. I have, some things I'm still trying to recover from and build this right now. And I want to help you build this too. So let's do this together. What does it mean for you to feel seen? Oh yeah, this is what it means for me to feel seen.
Mm-hmm.
And so as a parent, many times it's our kids that can cause our own anxieties, right?
Yeah.
Like you're trying to talk to them,
Sure.
you're trying to talk to them and they have the, yep. Okay, sure. And they have a wall up and it's giving you all of this anxiety on the inside as a parent, right? And so go through it together. That would be my best advice right there.
I love that, Nellie.
That's
Thank
amazing.
you. Thank you for sharing that. Vulnerability invites vulnerability.
It does.
And we need to be appropriately vulnerable with our kids. I get that. But man, if we can't be vulnerable with them, then how do we ever expect them to be vulnerable with us?
Yeah,
exactly.
So
Love what you just said. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah. I'm wondering, as we wrap up, Nellie, if you could just share a little bit about the program you offer, because it's for parents and for kids.
Yes.
And that really excites me.
Yeah, it's really, it can be hard sometimes to do something for the parents. And then again, the kids are just looking at the parents and saying, oh, this is something else they're saying. And they hear like the Ferris Bueller, wah.
Right.
Yeah.
Or I guess that's Charlie Brown.
Charlie Brown. Yeah. The teacher.
I got the Ferris Bueller though. Too.
Okay. Yeah.
Bueller.
And it can be hard too. I work with a lot of, teens in our communities and adolescents, but then when they go home, it's not reinforced. It's not continued at home. So really for this work, it's wonderful to do a collaboration between parents and kids. And so that's where Take the Lead, again, because of what I just talked about a few minutes ago, love and lead them to a place they love and lead themselves. So in Take the Lead, that's what we do. There is a wonderful video series in there for parents. There's also a video series for the adolescents that are going through this. And of course, the parents can watch those. You can do it with them. They can do it on their own. You can have a discussion afterwards, whatever fits your situation. Because again, every family is different. Every child is different. Every person learns in a different way as well. So it really just takes, how is this best going to fit your family? But there's a piece in there for kids. There's a piece in there for adults. And then it all collaborates together.
I love that.
That's amazing.
So cool. And really encourage you in the work that you do. And we're behind you for sure on that.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you.
I
You
can't
too.
wait to send people to
I know.
resources. I'm so excited.
So speaking of that, Nellie, where do people find you?
Yes.
Just NellieHarden.com. That's NellieHarden.com. You can find everything there. I have resources. I have books. I have master classes, and then of course private or Take the Lead resources as well. So
awesome.
Everything can be found there, including our social links and all that.
Perfect. And we will be sure to include that link in the show notes of this episode. So if you want to connect with Nellie, just scroll down to the show notes, click that link, and head over to NellieHarden.com and start hopping into some of that learning. I love that. Yeah.
It's amazing.
Nellie, thank you so much for blessing us with your time today and sharing with our listeners. I know that this discussion really brought some value.
Oh, yes. Amazing value. I want to jump into your curriculum. I mean, this is incredible.
Yeah, maybe we'll do that. Well, you got anything for empty nesters?
Not yet.
We're kind of, we're between that 65-70 and the 91-25 right now. So
well, I'm hoping at some point my 28-year-old will want to do some learning of this caliber along with me. I think that would be a game changer for both of us.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Wonderful. Well, again, thank you so much, Nellie, for joining us today. It's a real privilege and a pleasure to get to know you a little bit and hear more about what you're doing.
Absolutely.
And be able to take some practical steps right out of this episode and really start applying it in blended family life. I think this is going to be a great trajectory for people to get their year started with here in 2024.
I agree. Absolutely. Thank you so much for coming on the show. You're a delight. It's been a pleasure just getting to know you a little bit more, and just knowing that these resources are out there is just a blessing. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you for having me.
Wow, what a great conversation with Nellie. So excited for people to be able to hear this. Seriously, I encourage you to scroll down, tap that link that we put in there, nellieharden.com. Go over there and check out her program. I'm confident that it's going to bring a ton of value. And for today, we're going to make this episode a wrap.
Until next time.